You're listening to an episode of the Abigail Pugh podcast with, you guessed it, Abigail Pugh. I'm an introverted mama who took my online business from 0 to 7 figures in 15 months selling my own digital products on social media. And guess what? I did it all with my 3-year-old daughter no less than 3 feet away from me at all times. Now I'm bringing you everything I've learned about building a wildly profitable online business that supports your life while allowing you to truly live it. Get ready for raw, honest conversations with entrepreneurs making thousands per month selling their own digital products and people just like you who ditch self-doubt to create the life they've always wanted. If you're ready to make more money, have more impact, and still have time for the things that matter most, you're in the right place. Grab your sneakers, head out on your hot girl walk, and let's dive in. Today's guest is a student of mine who's a mother of 5 and also a sewing enthusiast. You heard that right. Sewing. Sewing quickly became not just a hobby, but a creative outlet that gave Amelia a renewed sense of purpose when she felt lost in motherhood, as so many of us moms often do. Now she has an audience on Instagram of over 838,000 people, which I read that correctly, you guys. 838,000 people follow her on Instagram. And she is passionate about sharing the same life-giving pursuit with other moms and has taught thousands of people how to sew through her digital products. Amelia, welcome to the show.
Hey, oh my goodness. I'm so excited to be here. One of my favorite podcasts, for sure.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. It's been so wild with my podcast. People like on Threads, they'll like post something like, what's your favorite business podcast? And people tag me and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's crazy. Like you never know how people are going to react to something. So thank you so much for saying that. You're so sweet. Okay, so I'd love to start these episodes off with you kind of just telling us about your journey. I feel like I am so excited to have you on the show because so many people think that like hobby digital products will not sell. And you have done such a beautiful job of taking it to more than just a hobby, right? Like you've created this community for women and moms, especially to come and like feel part of something and find joy in a hobby again, because I feel like in this day and age, hobbies are so quickly forgotten. Even me, like my hobby right now is my work.
I feel that.
And I'm okay with that for this season of life, right? But we often just overlook like the little things that bring us joy. And you've done such a good job of creating this insanely big community of people just finding joy in something simple like sewing again. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you kind of got where you are today.
Yeah. Oh man. So I know I'm like, where do I start? So I've always been like an entrepreneur from day one. So like I've pursued so many different things, never had like a real job per se, but I've always been doing something because like I just can't not pursue some kind of business thing. It's just like hardwired into me. So I had started out with like way back, like a blog, thinking like, all right, a blog for moms. Like my passion has always been like serving moms because I guess that's who I am. And I know a lot of times it's not easy. So I'm like, that's always been my passion. So I kind of started out like doing a little bit of blogging, thinking that's the direction I wanted to go. And then I like did some like selling of physical things that I sewed myself. I sold like nursing covers. And then like I stumbled upon making these like very niche like covers for this certain brand of baby carrier. And that was like 2020 and that was really blowing up. But then like I just kept hearing all this stuff about like courses. I was like in the Amy Porterfield world and just kept like hearing this. And I'm like, how cool is it that like you can do it and you don't have to I wouldn't have to make something to sell it.
Because you were selling physical products, right?
Yeah. And it was a lot of work. Like I would spend so much time sewing it. And like, so I kind of came to this crossroads where I did launch a sewing course. And so like I had that and it was a baby, but like it was starting to grow a little bit. And then I also had my physical things that I was selling over here. And I just knew like I can't continue doing both of these. And so I kind of I knew I was at a crossroads of like, I could have kept going, but I just felt like if I really want to grow this course thing, I have to jump in with both feet. So, and honestly, that was not making very much money. And I was making more money from my physical thing that I was selling, but I decided to stop that and like jump in to teaching people to sew through a digital course. And that was 2020, which probably was a good time to start.
Yeah.
I wish, well, looking back, I'm like, man, if I had like had my business established in 2020, that would have been like the best year ever. But I was kind of starting it in the midst of everything. But people were looking for things to do at home, and sewing was definitely having a moment. So I jumped in then and just have been like slowly and steadily growing. But it's just kind of been this last year since December of last year that things have I was honestly very close to quitting in November of last year, like so close, but things went nutso in December, and so glad that I did not, looking back at this point.
What was your follower count at in December of 2023?
Yes. So last year, 2023, I had just over 3,000 followers.
Oh, you guys, she's at over 800,000 now. Oh my God, that's insane. Oh my
It's been a wild ride.
Wow. So from 3,000 followers to what? 800, I just looked a minute ago, 838,000. That is insane. On sewing, you guys, like a hobby. This is wild. Okay, keep going. 3,000 followers in December, and then what happened?
So I'm trying to recap, like, how did this happen? And I would say, like, the biggest thing is, well, I had like one reel that started to do well for like how I was back then. It got like, I can't remember, 50 to 100,000 views. And like, that was huge to me at the time. And so I was like so inspired, and I was like, I'm going to keep going. And so I got really consistent. I did a series over from like December 1st through 12th. I did the 12 days of Stitchmas, which was like every day I would share like an easy project to sew as a gift. And like, none of this was batched. I was like in the morning, like, all right, what am I going to sew today? It was a little stressful, but I got through all 12 days, and like that really, I feel like just got a ball rolling.
Yep.
And
everybody's pausing this episode right now to go do a series.
Yeah. It was, I've done a few since then, and I love a good series because I feel like it's like people are like, oh, I want to see what she does tomorrow. So they're going to follow to see what you do tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I love series. And then in January, I had a reel go super, super viral. And it was what I like to call a calling reel, like CALLING. And I've kind of like termed this phrase that I like to call these reels that I've done, that multiple of them have gone really viral. And it's basically just a very short reel that's a trend, and it's talking about what my account is about. And it was basically just like calling all moms who want to learn to sew, something like that. And it was just very short. It was short, so it looped. And so I've done multiple of these with like different iterations of trends, and it went really viral. And like, it was such an easy follow, I think, because people are scrolling and they see this and they're like, oh, I've been wanting to learn to sew. And she's talking to moms. I'm going to go follow. So it's just like, I think these kind of reels are like so good for growing your following. And I don't think many people are doing them. Like, they're mainly talking to the people who already follow them, which like that's super important. But like,
or they post them once.
Yeah.
And then they never post them again. Like, I do these types of prompts all the time inside of my community because I'm like, you have to keep calling new people to your page. It's not something you can do once and then be like, oh, why nobody's following me? It's like, no, you have to do this over and over again, which is exactly what you did. And I love that.
Yeah. So I had in January, there was like, I think like one day. I know there was one day where I got 50,000 followers.
Oh my God. That's just wild.
I really don't even like 100% understand what exactly happened, but it got on the right side of Instagram or something that like it was showing all of my target people because it was just nuts. Like, it went from 10,000 to 100,000 very quickly in a couple of weeks probably. And it's just been pretty steady. Again, it kind of stalled out. Like, right after I hit 400,000, it kind of stalled for a little bit. But I realized looking back, I'm like, I wasn't doing those call-in reels for a little bit. I don't know why I stopped, but like wasn't. And then I had another one in July go even more crazy viral. That one reel has brought me 350,000 followers from like, I can look at my analytics in that one reel. Like,
is it one of the call out reels?
Mm-hmm. You know, the blinking trend where,
yes,
it was that.
Where it loops. I had another student. She had 15 million views on hers from that.
Yeah. Mine has almost 100 million.
Oh my gosh. Like, it's not a strategy to like do on every single post. Like there's some
No,
pages where
absolutely
that is
not.
all they do. And I'm like, no, you have to still give value, but try it, you guys. I will link to that reel in the comments for you guys to see it, to look at, because I think they're like so fascinating and it's just wild. Okay, keep going. Got 300 something thousand from that one reel. That's insane.
So that's kind of like brought me to where I am now. And I'm just, but like being consistent was the thing that was lacking so much before. Like I would post, every once a week maybe, or here and there, but like it was never
Yeah.
consistent. But, as soon as it started growing, I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to be real consistent now. Like I'm not missing a day. So it definitely gave me that kick in the butt to like post consistently.
Absolutely. And like, imagine if you had in December given up. I feel like this happens to so many of my students where they're like, I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing it. And I'm like, okay, but like find new ways, find something new to try and keep going, because like you never know when something is going to take off. And like, imagine if Amelia had stopped in December. Like, it's so wild to me. And I love that you say you were consistent, because I mean, it's clear that like not every reel goes viral of yours, right? And there's going to be some that flop, and there's going to be some that like take the F off. And if you don't make those flop ones and you don't see like what's working and what's not working, like you're never going to hit those ones that take off. And like, obviously Amelia's story is not typical. These are not typical results at all, but she never would have hit these results had she stopped posting, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your digital products and kind of what you offer for people, because I know you have a few different ones. I'd love to kind of lean into how you decided on the ones you have based on like what you saw your community needing.
Mm-hmm. So my main thing that I have is it's called the Mother Says Best course, and it just walks people from like the very beginning up through being able to sew like any clothes for themselves and their kids. It started off as just learning to sew kids' clothes, but it now includes like adult and kids' clothes, because I felt like, moms want to learn to sew for themselves too. So it has options for both. And that's like my main thing that I tell people, because a lot of people just come in and they're very overwhelmed. And my goal is to just like take the overwhelm out of it, show that it's not like, give them like quick little wins. So I like have like a little mini course that I sell where like it just walks them through setting up their machine and like making a tote bag. Like their very first thing is just like gives them that boost of like, oh my goodness, I just sewed something with my own two hands. Like I can actually do this. And then I also have a membership, which is more for intermediate to advanced people. You don't have to have gone through the course, but if you've gone through my main course, then you're like definitely ready for the membership. And inside we just like do a project together every month. And I like go into like more advanced techniques and tutorials and stuff like that. And then in like the beginning of this summer, I released a kids sewing course. So my kids and I kind of made this together and we filmed it. It's like teaching kids how to sew. And that was a lot of fun. It also like really stretched me. I'm like, okay, how do I like dumb this down? Not dumb it down, but, like explain it even more. It's almost like teaching how to tie your shoe. Like, you know how to do it, but like explaining it where an actual child can do it is a whole nother deal. So it was a lot of fun. So that's what I have right now. And I have, plans to release more courses in the future, just about like specific machines and stuff like that. But it's always what's next? Like my brain never stops.
I know, same. What is the pricing on those? And do you have one that is like your bestseller?
Mm-hmm. The Mother Says Best course is definitely my bestseller, which that's also what I've done the most talking about. So it's $347 right now. I've bumped it up like throughout this year. I've gone up, and that's scary. I'm gonna say, like, I am not good with like pricing is scary to me. Like, but I have people in my ear like, Amelia, you got to do it. You got to like keep raising the price just a little bit, and I never want it to be like unattainable, but it has like, it started out like 97 in January. I sold it for 97 for the last time. And then it went to like, I think 147 or 197. I think I had it like 197, but I would offer it for 147 a lot for like when people join my email list or something like that.
Gotcha.
And then about a month ago, I raised it to the 347 price.
Look at you go. And how were sales affected a little bit or a lot? How did that go? I know it's so scary to like raise prices, and I'm sure you're adding to it and making it more amazing as you do, but it's scary. So how did that kind of affect your sales?
So it wasn't affected a ton when I jumped from obviously, like before I would raise the price, I would tell people. And so I had a huge
Yeah.
surge, like right
Yeah.
before I would raise the price. And then it's, crickets for a little bit because you just sold
Yep.
a ton. So I just did that most recent price raise. I wasn't raging. um,
Our new term, price raging.
yes. I mean, sometimes it might fit, but no, so that was my most recent price raise was less than a month ago. So it's been a little quiet since then, but I have a big launch coming up in the end of September, beginning of October. So I'm trying not to stress. It is scary though. Like it's a little bit scary.
Especially when you're like gearing up for something. Like I always tell people it's so normal for sales to like go down a little bit if you're like priming for something else that's coming. And I think you kind of like, you want that. You want to save up like the priming and everyone going for that launch that you're doing. And it's totally normal, but it is such a mindset shift when you're like used to daily sales or a certain amount of daily sales. And then all of a sudden you're like, cool, I'm not making remotely close to what I was before, but like there's a reason behind it, right? And I always think it's worth, sacrificing your short-term goals for a long-term goal, especially with launches. Like there's like so much power in a good launch. Launches are, I hate and I love them. I love when I'm actually in it. But before it's like, it's always kind of scary and you never like, you can project what you think is going to happen, but you never truly know. Like you can, there's like launch calculators and all these things where you're like, oh, this is what you're going to hit. But like, you don't know that for sure. So it's slightly terrifying for sure.
Yeah. So invigorating and exhausting and terrifying and exciting. It's a roller coaster.
It's wild how you can feel so many things at once. You're like excited out of your mind, but also like, oh my gosh, when is this gonna be over? I'm so tired.
Yeah, it's tiring.
It's a lot. Now, okay, so I'm sure there's been some bumps along the road this year and things that have not gone as planned. Can you tell us a little bit about anything that maybe didn't go as planned and how you pivoted this year?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that was a little bit just like, oh man, that is not how I meant or like expected that to go is like I had come off of a launch in January that just blew my mind. Like it was, and I guess it was so close to like a few months ago, like none of these people were even here. And I think so I had such a surge of new people that never even see my stuff. My January launch did amazing. And it just like, I was on cloud nine. And so I launched again in May thinking that like this is around Mother's Day, but it did not do nearly as well as my January launch did, even though I had like double the followers that I had in January. Yep. And I think looking back, I'm realizing so much now, May for moms is not a good time. Like they're so busy. Kids are getting ready to be out of school, so they don't think they're going to be able to commit time. Like it's just learning. Like, and January, I think is always going to be my highest, even when I didn't have this amount of people in my world. Like it was always higher because people just got a sewing machine for Christmas. They're looking for help. And so that's always going to be my highest time. Yeah, exactly. So May was a little bit of like, oh shoot, was January, was it just like my one time of shining and now I'm like I'm a dead star up in the sky. Like it was just kind of like, what am I doing? Like it was a little bit, it just shook me up a little bit, but it's been fine. And like I just looking back now, I'm like, oh well, that totally makes sense. Like everybody's really busy in May, so it makes sense that everybody wasn't looking for a new hobby right before their kids get out of school. But so it's just like I think you learn a lot just by doing it. And like, sometimes it's not going to go exactly how you think, but then pick yourself up and keep going. I'm like, just keeping on going is like, you just got to keep trucking.
That's the theme here. You just got to keep going. And I feel like your first year of business, it was the same for me. Like I tried so many different things and I learned like when is better time to launch, when it's not the greatest time to launch for like my audience. And I never would have known those things if I didn't try first and like test it out and see, okay, maybe people don't want to buy as much during this time. So let's make that intentionally my slower season where I am nurturing and I am, really pouring into them during that so that I can have a bigger launch down the line. I think it's such a good reminder, like my first year, well, not my first year of business. So I started this brand, personal brand, whatever you want to call it, business in the summer of 2022, but 2023 was like my yes year. I said yes to everything. And now in 2024, I'm like, this is my no year. I got to say no to things so that I can say yes to the things that really move the needle. But like, I never would have realized that without the 2023 year, because I was able to test so many different things and try it and see what works and what doesn't work. And I always love to tell people, like, you'll learn so much more from your failures than you will your successes. And like, the more failures you collect, the more you're like, okay, next time I know better. And it's like
Yeah.
easy to hear something and learn something, but then like you have to apply it and see how it works for you, because there is no like, copy and paste strategy for everybody. And I'm always really big on talking about that, because I'm like, there's no like exact outline that's going to work for everyone. Like everyone has different audiences. Everyone has different, Enneagrams and just different ways that they show up. And you have to like try something once to see, okay, do you like this or not? And does it work well for you? So I love that so much. Do you
Yeah.
have like a favorite offer in your product suite that you're like, I love this one, it's my baby?
Oh, definitely just my Mother Says Best course,
Yep.
because I've just seen so many people like have success where they didn't think they would be able to. And like that is just the
Yeah.
most encouraging feeling, like for somebody to be like, oh my goodness, like I've tried sewing before and I couldn't. And then I took your course and like, look at this thing I made. It's so rewarding. And I think that's just they see the biggest transformation in that course. So
Yep.
it's definitely my favorite.
That's awesome. I love that your community is kind of like the last product that they get from you, right? And it's something that they
Hmm.
stay with you. It's a monthly recurring charge, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so I love that. And I love that you have something in there for them every month to like feel satisfied that they did it. I think that's such a huge part of communities, yes, but like anything reoccurring is like each month having something that like you're really truly helping them with. I'd love to know like what are like the last few months of things that you guys made together. It's so fun to me.
Yeah. So last month, I showed them how to like, I don't know if you're familiar with like shirring. It's like where elastic, it's like, it's so hard to describe when you can't see. But like it's dresses that like have the like little lines, tiny lines of elastic and like makes the
Got it.
bodice part like really much tighter and then it's flowy at the bottom.
Like all those
So
Amazon dresses, right? Where it's
yes,
like
yes, yes,
tighter
yes,
up
yes,
on the
yes.
boob, pulled you in. Okay, we've all
Yeah,
seen those Amazon
exactly.
dresses. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. I'm like, how do you describe that? Yes. So that's what we did last month. And then I always have like a technique that goes along with the actual project. So there's like a sew along is what we call it, of like making the project. But then there's like, I also have like a whole library of techniques so they can like browse through and just see the techniques to like so the shirring went along with that project. And then the month before that, sometime over the summer, we did like sewing swimwear. So we like
Oh,
sewed swimsuits for like, I did it for my daughter and that was a lot of fun. So just, it's always, I try and vary it between like adult projects, kid projects. We branch out into like sewing bags and, all kinds of, I like to like stretch a little further than just like clothes in
yeah.
the membership.
Now I want to sew a tote bag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things I never thought I'd want to do. Okay, so switching back a little bit more to like the business side of things, where would you say more of your sales come from? Reels or stories or email? Like what is kind of like the flow that you've gotten into for selling?
I feel like reels and probably especially more when my price was a little bit lower. I feel like it was
Hmm,
easier with reels just because it's
lower
an
ticket.
easier, yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
easier. So I'm kind of just transitioning, working a little more in email and getting some more, what do you call it, funnels in place
Yep.
and things like that so that I'm, you know, it's a little bit longer of a game. I feel like,
Yep.
whereas a lower price point, you can talk about something and people see the reel and then immediately buy it. And
Yeah.
like, that's really nice. And like, it definitely makes it easier to sell when you're using reels specifically for selling. So now I'm
Yeah.
kind
Low
of
ticket.
changing my focus more on in reels to just getting people on my email list.
Hmm.
So talking about like my lead magnets and things like that, and then trying to do a little bit more selling during launches and I'm kind of going into that. So I'm not putting people in like an evergreen funnel right now, but it is available all the time. So after the launch is done, I'll just be working on selling more inside my email.
Gotcha. I love that. And it's so true. Lower ticket is so much easier to sell in Reels. Because it's kind of like that no-brainer pricing where they're like, oh yeah, I need this. I'm going to get it right now. Whereas like when it's 300 and something bucks, you're like, okay, I need to think about this and make sure I want it. And you do need like a little bit more nurturing. So I love to see that your strategy is kind of shifting now that your prices have gone up a little bit. If you could give somebody who's just starting out with digital products one piece of advice or two, what would it be?
Oh man, I think it's kind of come up again and again, but just like the consistency and just keeping on going. Like I feel like there have been multiple times that I would get discouraged and like I think people look at my account and they're like, "Oh my goodness, what an overnight success." But like I had 4 years basically of working my rear end off, like creating the products and like I learned so much in those 4 years that if I had been thrown into the deep end like I have been this last year without like my things already built, like my, knowing kind of what I'm doing a little bit, I'm still, sometimes I feel like I have no clue what I'm doing, but like I have a sense of like stability a little bit in my business already. I'm so thankful that like I took those steps and then the growth came. Like I see people who like go viral and don't have their systems set up and things like that yet. And I'm like, oh man, that stresses me out to even think about it. So I think just like staying the course, if this is the course, I didn't mean to do that, but like just keep pushing and like don't get discouraged when you see other people. Like I think with me, the thing that that especially kept me going when I wasn't having success was like listening to podcasts like these of hearing other people's stories of like, oh my goodness, they did it. Like they have made an actual business from this. So like, why can't I? And I think like I've just always had a stubborn mindset of like, I'm gonna do it. So like just not quitting has been my biggest asset, I think. And just don't get discouraged. I mean, there were multiple times when I like applied for other jobs and didn't get it. And at the time I was so disappointed. And now I'm like, thank goodness I did not get those jobs because I would have quit. I wouldn't have been able to do both at the same time. So just
I love that.
Keep pushing.
And I love what you said about having everything ready first. I feel like so many people are like, I need to grow this huge audience before. And it's like, no, I would much rather you launch with a smaller audience, learn how to launch. Like it's a lot of work to launch to a huge audience. Like it is a lot of work. And so if you don't have all the systems in place, you kind of don't know what you're doing. I loved my first launch and how it was like, I didn't have a crazy huge audience. I think I had like just under 12,000 followers on TikTok. And I wasn't really active on Instagram. I had like 3,000 followers from a previous account that I had on Reels. So like I didn't really launch to that very much. It was mainly my TikTok audience and it wasn't this crazy huge audience. And I learned so much during the launch of like how I don't want to launch.
Exactly.
Like I did a lot of the emails that were like, this is your last chance. And like, I didn't know how to nurture. I didn't know how to sell in a storytelling way and all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, imagine if I had launched to like my audience size now for my first launch, I would have panicked. Like I would have been so like overwhelmed. So I think getting your first product out there and learning how to sell, and then knowing that like down the line, you can use everything you learned from your first launch on the other launches. Like there's some people I see and they're like, their first launch was like these crazy, like 6 figures. Like my first several smaller launches were nowhere near that. And I'm so glad they weren't because I learned so much more by launching to a smaller audience that I could kind of pour more into and I could really see what was working for them and what wasn't. And I was able to develop my products even better to where now like my products are not just education, they're also implementation. And I feel like that's what a lot of things were missing in the beginning. And I learned that by launching to a smaller audience, by getting the feedback from them and being able to be like, okay, so you guys want the education, but you also want to learn how to like actually implement all of this. Cause I feel like that's what's missing in a lot of digital products is it's just like all this information poured at you. And then you're like, cool, what do I do with this?
Yes.
And it's overwhelming. We already have such an overload of information right now with social media and just like everything being at the tip of our fingers. So I love that so much. And one last question. Do you remember your first launch, how many followers you had?
0.
Okay, not your first launch, maybe. Sorry, your January big launch.
Oh, that launch. Okay.
The first launch in, what was it, 2024, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's see. So like while I was launching, I was also growing a ton. So it was, I think because it was like during my launch that one reel went viral. So it's very hard to say. But it
Perfect
was,
timing.
yeah, I know. It was nice. It was probably between, I would say around 50 to 80,000, something around there.
Gotcha. That's amazing. That's wild. I love that so much. Well, Amelia, let us know where we can find you. I think Instagram is probably your most active platform, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
you guys, I will tag everything below for you, but let us know where we can find you and your best, I think you said it multiple times, the best place to start if somebody listened to this and they're like, oh my God, I want to learn how to sew too.
Yeah, so Instagram definitely is the place where I hang out, and it's Mother Sews Best _ because somebody already took Mother Sews Best.
Of course.
And then I have like just a free video lesson if you just need help threading your machine. That's what most people start out with me, is just watching the free lesson. It doesn't matter what kind of machine you have. I cover it all in there. So it's all on my website. And then from there, I'm getting ready to do, I don't know when this podcast will go out, but I'm getting ready to do like a free challenge for making a tote bag together. So that starts in the end of September.
Awesome. Is that a challenge that will be evergreen afterwards, or is it just like a one-time only thing?
I do sell it as like a mini course, but it's a lot of fun live. Like there's a whole Facebook group and everybody's in there, and there's more lessons than are just in the course. So that's called my Ready, Set, Sew challenge, and it's a lot of fun. So
awesome. Well, we'll make sure to tag that below for you guys, and I can't wait for you guys to meet her virtually, of course, because I love this stuff. It's so amazing. So, Amelia, thank you so much for coming on today, and I will see you over on Instagram, everyone else. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and my guests today. If you learned anything from our episode, I would love it if you could share it over on your Instagram stories and tag me at Abigail Pugh. Until next time, love you, mean it.